Mr. President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I also have the honor to update the Council regarding the implementation of Resolution 5733 on cooperation with Georgia, adopted on 11 October 2024. OHCHR encourages Georgia to strengthen its commitment to human rights by supporting an independent public defender's office, promoting a vibrant civil society, and implementing the country's National Human Rights Action Plan. We wish to draw your attention to several recent developments related to the situation of human rights in Georgia, including in the adoption of specific legislative changes that took place in 2024, followed by ongoing public protests since November 2024. These are outlined in this update, which includes human rights issues and challenges in Abkhazia, Georgia, but also in the Tinkhvali region, South Ossetia, Georgia, as requested by the Human Rights Council. The Office is concerned that the law on transparency of foreign influence, adopted on 14 May 2024, carries serious risks to civic space, freedoms of expression and association. The law on family values and on the protection of minors, adopted on 17 September 2024, may encourage hate speech, lead to more incidents of violence, and reinforce stigma, intolerance, and misinformation. It may also pose a risk to a wide range of human rights. In April 2024, Parliament abolished the 25% gender quotas ahead of the October 2024 parliamentary elections, and a process has been initiated to replace the word gender with equality of women and men in all laws. Other legislative amendments to the Code on Administrative Offences, to the Criminal Code, and the Law on Assemblies and Manifestations were adopted on 13 December 2024. These include provisions that impose penalties on protest activities, such as fines for traffic disruptions, restrictions on protest materials, and preventive detention measures. These laws and initiatives must be reviewed to align with Georgia's obligations under international human rights law. Human rights violations committed since 28 November 2024 in the context of public protests in the country remain of serious concern. These include the arrests of protesters and journalists, allegations of unnecessary, disproportionate use of force by law enforcement, attacks against journalists and media workers covering the protests, and lack of due process rights for those detained. It's essential that all allegations are promptly, independently, and thoroughly investigated, and that those responsible are held accountable. Those arbitrarily detained for exercising their human rights must be released. Mr. President, the security situation in Abkhazia and South Ossetia remains relatively stable, with sporadic tensions and incidents. However, there has not been any tangible progress in terms of human rights protection and improvements in humanitarian conditions of the affected population. We continue to receive allegations of human rights violations, particularly affecting ethnic Georgians in Galia and Akalgori districts, and those living in the areas adjacent to the administrative boundary lines and displaced people. These include violations of the right to life, torture and ill treatment, arbitrary detentions, violations of property rights, the right to receive an education in native language, restriction on freedom of movement, and discrimination on ethnic grounds. Continued movement restrictions and the closure of crossing border points at the administrative boundary lines with Abkhazia and South Ossetia continue to negatively impact freedom of movement, access to health services, livelihoods, as well as preserving family and social ties. We reiterate our calls for the lifting of all undue closing of border crossings, movement restrictions, and for the full reopening of crossing points at the administrative boundary line without further delay. We call on all involved to ensure that independent, impartial, and thorough investigations into the cases of alleged violations of the right to life take place. We reiterate the need to address the alleged cases of arbitrary deprivation of liberty of ethnic Georgians by the authorities in controlling Abkhazia and South Ossetia, in line with international human rights law. Sustainable solutions are needed for securing personal identity and other documents which are essential for accessing various rights and facilitating freedom for movement. The continued lack of progress in finding political solutions, coupled with the absence of effective remedies and confidence-building measures, hampers the protection of human rights in Abkhazia, South Ossetia, and adjacent areas under the control of the Georgian government. The situation is further exacerbated by the lack of access for international human rights organizations and mechanisms. Regrettably, OHCHR's repeated requests for unimpeded access to Abkhazia and South Ossetia, as outlined in Human Rights Council Resolution 5733, have also not been granted. Mr. President, in conclusion, we call upon all concerned to prioritize the implementation of outstanding recommendations from these reports. I thank you.